New Central Florida District Chair. He'd be happy to sign you up today, or would Kelly or Kia in the back. So please consider joining ULI. So this is our monthly breakfast meeting where we try to bring in some of our industry leaders to talk about cutting edge topics. If you're interested in contributing to the programming committee, we have a meeting right after this in the next room, and that's where we're going to work on our 2020 calendar to make sure that we're bringing, again, innovative, cutting-edge topics to our membership and to our guests. Most of our sessions this year have been approved for AICP credits and AIA credits, so that's a great thing. We've been trying to put more of an emphasis on this year. And I didn't introduce myself. My name is Curtis Drevka. I'm the Programs Committee Co-Chair, and in the back there, raise your hand while she's eating, is my Co-Chair, Troy Madison. So any questions about programming, you can see either of us or anything else, talk to Scott, especially if it's a complaint of some sort. George. So I want to let you know about a couple other events we're having this month. So on August 19th, the Women's Leadership Institute, or WLI, are going to have their third installment of what they call their After Hours event. Is anybody here in WLI? Heather and I think Kathy and others? Okay. So that's not just for women only, is that right? It's leadership by women, but all are invited to attend. So that's going to be August 19th at 5:30, and they're going to be talking about Village I and Horizon West, which is the final village there, so very important for our region. And then we also have, on September 5th, the Young Leaders. Is anybody here a Young Leader? Not anymore? Yeah. So you're supposed to be under 35. I don't think they card you, so if you can get a go for it. We're having a Visionaries of Central Florida event, so that's where they have some of the industry leaders there available to mentor and give back to the emerging professionals. So it's a really neat event. That's going to be September 5th at East End Market. Everybody knows where that is on Corinne. And then if stay up to date on the ULI Central Florida website. Take a look at our Twitter. We're live tweeting today. It's Central Florida ULI.
ULI Central Florida.
ULI Central Florida. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get out of the way and introduce Mr. Billy Hattaway. I think probably everybody knows who he is, but I want to read you his bio briefly because it's pretty impressive. Yeah, short one. So he bachelor's degree in civil engineering technology from Wentworth Institute of Technology and an MBA from Florida State University. Is that okay with everybody? Florida State. Nice to get the, yeah. He's held a number of leadership roles throughout the state, including as a FDOT District 1 Secretary, the DOT Director from the Office of Design and State Roadway Design Engineer. So that was in District 3, is that right?
No, that was Central Office.
Central Office, okay. And then I think this is really impressive. He was recognized by Governing Magazine as a 2014 Public Official of the Year and by the Florida chapter of the Congress for the New Urbanism with the John Nolan Award for his leadership on the FDOT's bicycle and pedestrian safety and complete streets initiatives. So very accomplished professional. I'm happy to have known him for about 15 years. Happy that you're back to get back to our membership. So please join me in welcoming Billy, and we'll get right into it.
Thank you, Carter. It's good to be here. It's always a pleasure for me to spread the message that I've been spreading for a number of years now. As far as cutting edge is concerned, there is one element that's cutting edge in here. The rest of this, I think, from my perspective at least, even though it seems working as an engineer in the engineering industry, it still seems like it's a new thing for a lot of our engineers who haven't gotten on board yet. But thank you for having me. I've been at the city for almost 3 years now. Since I have a little more time, I usually get through this in about 20 minutes, but we have a little more time, so I'll just slow things down. I've been there about 3 years now. The transportation department was disassembled in 2009. And so when I came back in November of 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years ago, there had been no transportation department. And so I spent the first year putting it back together and finding out at that point in time when I hired my fiscal manager that while we need $30 to $40 million a year for my department to function, I have $2 million a year. So you'll be hearing more about the transportation sales tax, which the county has to lead. Our funds for transportation have to go through Orange County. And so there will be a referendum next November, which will significantly increase the funds to the city, and then I can start building the projects that I'm going to show you today. So just a little bit of background. I think it's important for citizens to know what's going on in their city. I've lived in the city for 12 years, working in the private sector, and at the DOT, I had no clue what our situation was for the transportation department. So I'm going to start off where, unfortunately, I have to start off a lot of times, and that has to do with transportation safety. When the 2011 report came out from the Transportation for America, which is a element of the Smart Growth America organization, the state of Florida was in 4 of our regions were in the top 5 most dangerous places in the country for pedestrians and bicyclists. And now you can see the 2019 report, we've actually gone from 4 to 8. Part of that is because they changed the population demographic to include smaller cities than regions like Orlando, so now places like Cape Coral and others are in that list as well, unfortunately. And unfortunately, things are not getting much better. We've had a 23% increase in fatalities. It's up, well, if you go back to 2013, a 26% increase in fatalities. And you can see we have over 3,000 people a year dying on our roads, almost 10 a day. And it's part of what the Vision Zero Network, and this is why I joined them, part of what they're advocating is this is a public health crisis, and it's not getting the attention that a lot of other things in the media get, unfortunately. We can have a helicopter crash and 3 people die, and it's national news. But we have over 40,000 people dying on our roads every day, and it's just not getting adequate attention. It seems to be, for whatever reason, it seems to be an acceptable cost of driving. And for people like me, it's not. I've been trying to do something about this since I was the state roadway design engineer.
So Billy, the 3,000 fatalities, that's an annual number, or that's over the 5 years?
Yeah, that's an annual number. There's a chance that we may go over 3,200 this year based on the current trends. So it's something that to me is just not acceptable. I tried back in the mid to late 90s when I was a state roadway design engineer. I tried to get the agency to do something meaningful about it, and the agency just wasn't ready. Even though the leadership would say safety was our #1 priority, it was not our #1 priority.
Billy, how does that trend track nationally?
Well, we were in the mid-30s a few years ago. We're now back over 40,000. When I was a state roadway design engineer, we were in the mid-40s, and it went down primarily due to improvements in automobile occupant safety, not in terms of crashes. Crashes have not gone down. Crashes continue to go up. And a lot of this, I think, can be attributed to distracted driving, at least those of us in the industry that follow this stuff very closely. It can't be tracked very well, so law enforcement doesn't really have a way to meaningfully track the causes from distracted driving. So the city, I was able to convince the mayor and the city leadership that we should be part of the Vision Zero network. Vision Zero started in Sweden about 20 years ago, and because of the increases in improvement in transportation safety, it came into the U.S. about 6.5 years ago. The city of New York, you probably heard of Jeanette Sidicon, who has done a lot with this effort, and she's involved with the Vision Zero network, was able to create double-digit reductions in fatalities in New York City. Portland and San Francisco, likewise, double-digit reductions in fatalities, and all of this in less than 5 years. So, and I'll talk about why that is and why we're able to do things differently. Basically, it's a systemic approach to prevention. I can tell you at the state, the way safety tends to get dealt with is you're doing a resurfacing project or you're doing a reconstruction project, and you deal with the safety issues on those corridors. There's not, the effort has not been to go out and find what are the highest crash corridors and then do something meaningful about it. And that's why I say it's not been until 2011 when the secretary brought me on board to lead the safety initiative. It has not been a priority as it should have been at the DOT. And so the bottom line here is that you've got to have leadership. I was fortunate to have 2 secretaries at DOT that basically let me drive policy change. And while my leadership obviously had some role, if I had not had those 2 secretaries, I couldn't have accomplished what I did here 5 years ago. So this is basically a summary of how we've done things traditionally. And as I mentioned earlier, the safety issues tend to get dealt with when transportation agencies are doing other projects, and then they deal with the safety issues that might happen to be in that corridor, even though that may not be where the primary problems are in the region. And so that's what we're changing with the Vision Zero efforts. We were fortunate. We actually use VHB, who works a lot with Federal Highway on safety programs. They develop a lot of the training around safety, including the courses that I've been able to bring to the city, designing for pedestrian safety, conducting road safety audits, all of that. And so they helped us to develop our action plan for our Vision Zero plan, which we just finished up our Vision Zero action plan. And this just lists the elements, what Vision Zero calls the core elements for Vision Zero. And I'll give you a moment to read that. But really, it's all about getting the right speeds in the right place. And so that was the goal at DOT. We used a context-based, basically we used the transects from the SMART code as the basis for street design. As I told the Secretary Botchwald, and he used this quote a lot, instead of a one-size-fits-all approach to street design, it's designing the right street for the right place. At the DOT, our minimum design speed, even in downtown Orlando, was 40 miles an hour before we changed the design manual. It's now 25, and it was a huge effort to get it from 40 down to 25. I had to threaten a few people. But we got to 25 at least. So, and then another big focus of Vision Zero is equity. So in the city, and I'll talk more about this, we looked at the city by commission district, because we have commission districts that have communities of concern. And so I wanted to make sure that we were providing equity to those communities of concern. Obviously, at the city, we get plenty of complaints from neighborhoods like College Park and Baldwin Park, but not so much from Paramore. So we need to make sure that we're giving everyone treatment, equal treatment, or better than equal treatment based on the conditions from a safety standpoint. And you can see our mission here. The mission is to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries within the city by 2040. So,
is this going to be available for us, the PowerPoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And our public workshop PowerPoint may actually be on the city's website.
Okay, great.
We have a Vision Zero link on our website. So how we did this is that it's very much about engagement in terms of what we call the task force. Every Vision Zero city starts with a Vision Zero task force, and is bringing in all the stakeholders who have some stake in the problem. Obviously, with hospitals, our trauma center is Orlando Health, and so they end up dealing with all of this every day. And so we're working with them. They work with us actually to help develop our goals, objectives, and our performance metrics, but you can see the list of folks that were involved. We were very fortunate. We had really good attendance. We had 3 task force meetings where we developed all these elements that are part of our plan. So these were the goals that we created, and I'll give you a moment to take a look at this. But basically, we're looking, when we look at design, operations, and maintenance, everything is about safety. Capacity is always going to be an element, but safety comes first. We've got to change the model where moving cars is the only goal. We've got to create safety as a foundation for doing things differently. We've got to work on education. So it's not just a matter of knowing what the laws are, but we need to help people understanding what the causes of crashes are. One of the things that I learned when I was at the state, and I've been polling people for about 4.5, 5 years now, is that people don't know the law. So, and this is not a shaming exercise, because you'll see almost nobody knows. How many of you, after you got your learner's permit, have read the driver's handbook again? Not a soul. Over 90% have not. And yet the laws change every year. We have a flashing yellow arrow for turn indication. Do you know what that means? A lot of people don't know what it means. We put modern roundabouts. We put modern roundabouts on the system. Do you know what that means? A lot of people say, well, we don't know how to drive modern roundabouts. You know, one of the biggest challenges we have with modern roundabouts, which we put in place at the state level, that before a signal can be put in, a model roundabout has to be evaluated and proven not to be the first choice because they reduce fatalities by 90%, serious injuries by 75%, and they're actually 75% more efficient than the signal because you don't have people stop when nobody's there. And so you're going to see more model roundabouts on the state system. The biggest problem we have with roundabouts is that people who will not stop for a stop sign will stop at a yield sign. But it's a fact.
Isn't the state directed to construct 5 roundabouts per district per year?
No, you're referring back to an ATHS requirement that the districts had to have at least two modern roundabouts in construction within 5 years. That was the goal that the NASDAQ had. Unfortunately, there's 2 districts that have resisted that all along, 2 of our rural districts. And then another big change with law enforcement, and law enforcement is important to this, is that we're going to be able to help our law enforcement, our police department, be more focused on where we have the biggest problems. They typically respond to complaints, even though there may not be a real safety problem, it can be a perceived safety problem. And one of the things I learned again with the city is that back in the early 90s, we had about 25 traffic officers when the city was much smaller geographically. This is before, I'm assuming before Lake Nona was annexed into the city. We now have 200 square miles. When I came to the city almost 3 years ago, we had 12 officers in the traffic division. We now have 7 because of the mandate by the legislature to have law enforcement officers in every school. We only have 7 people in law enforcement, and they're covering the city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not adequate to deal with the safety issues that we have.
Then why do they always seem to ticket me?
They must have your number.
How do they always find me?
They must have your number.
Because you haven't read the manual.
And of course, we want to demonstrate continuous progress. One of the things about Vision Zero is transparency. So our website will basically put data out there showing what progress we are or are not making. And then access to the trauma center is something that was another thing I learned. The emergency services have specific routes that they tend to use to get to Orlando Health, and so we're going to work with them to help them improve access time to those trauma centers, either through signal, through smart applications where they can preempt signals and things of that nature. And then the last one, which I've already talked about, making sure that we're investing in communities of concern. So as part of the community outreach, you can see here just some images. In fact, there's Kurt with Commissioner Sheehan. We had meetings in the 6 commissioner districts, basically introduced them to Vision Zero. And what we asked them was to help us to identify what corridors that you would use if you could walk or bicycle more comfortably, what safety concerns that you might have specifically to your area that will help us in developing this Vision Zero action plan. The other thing we did after our first meeting, everyone was telling us all the things that we already know. So I put together this slide so that when we started the next 5 meetings, that we already had this up front. Don't tell us these things because we already know this stuff. Tell us the things that are specific to your neighborhood. And that was very helpful because we didn't spend a lot of time hearing things that we already did. So I mentioned earlier about the 6 commissioner districts, and you can see here, can you see in the back the numbers on this slide? If not, I can read them out to you. But you can see between 2015 and 2017, we had 2,768 serious injuries and fatalities. 61 of those were fatalities and 2,700 serious injuries. If you go and read the federal highway definition of a serious injury, is pretty upsetting. And we don't think about serious injuries as much because all we hear about is fatalities, but we're talking about very serious stuff here. Many of these serious injuries end up in lifelong impacts the people's quality of life. And so, and then you can see by commissioner districts, the statistics for each of those categories. And these are heat maps that we created that show where the greatest challenges are. I'm not going to go through all of the commissioner districts, but one of the most telling parts of this Vision Zero effort is identifying your high injury network. And what we asked VHB to do is to identify the top 3 most dangerous corridors in terms of crashes in each of the commissioner districts. So these segments of corridors, these 3 segments of corridors in each of the commissioner districts accounted for between 28 and 79% of all the serious crashes in those corridors. So if we focus on these 3 segments in Commissioner Ortiz district, 2 segments of Cimarron and a segment of Corey Ford Road, we have the potential to have double-digit reductions in fatalities and serious injuries. So this is what came out of our Vision Zero action plan, and next we'll be doing the implementation. We won't be able to do the kinds of efforts I would like to do until the sales tax, when and if it passes. But the district secretary, Mike Shannon, has already agreed to work with us on the state corridors because they're not 80% of our high injury network.